now. And I want to apologize. There is, unfortunately, a gardener in my neighborhood across the street. So if you hear some of that in the background, I apologize. And hopefully, you can still hear me okay. If at any time you can't, just let me know. And I will try to kind of move different areas of the room if I can. So that being said, today I'm just going to stick with going over only list views and reports. And that way we have the opportunity for you guys to kind of jump in. And if there's certain ones that, as I start talking, you've started one and you just can't get it the way you want it, or there's a report that you're working on and you'd like us to kind of everybody look at it, and it might be the same issue that a bunch of other people are having. So this time, feel free. There's actually a lot less people on the call this time. So any time that you want to jump in and just ask a question, feel free. I will try to do a better job at looking at the chat messages as they pop up. I am kind of a rookie when it comes to these Skype meetings in terms of doing trainings with a large group of people. I'm used to doing them in person. So I did notice at the end of it yesterday that a couple people had sent messages, and if I wasn't staring at the screen, they would pop up and then disappear, and I didn't catch them all until the end. So I apologize for that. But basically, to start, I want to kind of go over the differences between list views and reports and when you should use which one. List views, the thing to keep in mind about them is they are only good if you are looking at a single object. So what I mean by that is, as you're thinking about what report you want or what data you're trying to pull out of the system, if it is everything that when I go and look at a quote, for example, and it has cutoff dates, it has the contract sale date, the projected close, the actual sale, all that information lives on my quote page layout when I'm looking at it. If I want to generate some type of a list of that information, then I can use a list view, and I can do the list view on any of these objects here listed on the left. So these are all considered objects. Now, if you know that what you want to look at, for example, when we create the contingency report, there is no way that I could have done a list view to show me my contingencies, because the contingency, when you look at an actual quote, they're on the related list on the right-hand side, which means they are a different object. So because I want to look at all of my information about contingencies, the only thing that lives on the contingency object is the information about, what is the contingent expiration date, things like that. But I need to see it as it relates to this particular quote. So that's considered two different objects. When you're going to look at something like that, you need to switch to a report, because that's looking at a couple different objects at the same time. And then there's also the fact that some people prefer reports, and that's okay. But I'm going to show you today some of the benefits of using list views. One, they are definitely faster to create and very flexible. The other thing they can be good for, and what I use them for often, is either I want to quickly grab some information that I'm just going to look at one time, and I don't want to build a report and have to save the report or, create it from scratch and try to pull in all the right objects and dates when I'm just grabbing a certain set of information I want to look at right away. And then the other thing you can do in the list views is you can update, and they call it mass editing. So if, for example, I was looking to update a bunch of projected close dates at the same time because I have either a phase of homes or a group of homes that all got delayed, I can do that in a list view without having to go into each quote one by one and update the projected close date. I can do it within my list view. So when I come over here to create any list view, first thing I need to do is determine what object it is I'm looking for. The most common ones that people are going to do list views on are going to be connections, quotes, and products. If it's something to do with the lots and you want to look at your lots that are available or your lots that are in a certain status, you can look at the lots. Most of the time we're looking at quotes for cutoff dates, for close dates, for the dollar amounts, maybe your option totals, things like that. And then on the connections, that's where you're going to spend the time looking at most of your backlog. So in the connections, we would do something like a prospect list where you could then start tracking and updating the information about your prospects. So for example, if I go into the quote, with all of these list views, if they are ones that I have created, you won't be able to edit them, but as you're aware, you can clone and then make your own. We do have the ability for certain users, Steve, for example, is one of them, Melissa, they have the ability to create a list view and share it with all of you. So that they're not having to go into each individual user and create the same list view multiple times. So if there is one that has been identified as useful for the entire team, it can be shared across the division. If I was looking to, and maybe you guys want at this point can jump in if there is a list view that you are curious if I can build it, or I can very easily just make one up right now so I can walk you through kind of the steps, but I'll just open it up in case there's one somebody would like me to do that might be useful. Going one.
Amy, I think some of the most common list views that this is Steve, by the way. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Um, Team members that are on, would you agree? Some of the most common list views that I know that we're trying to help team members with are just list views for their current backlog, home buyers and backlog, home owners that they've already sold and that are closed, and then their connection banks by priority
Okay.
rating.
So in terms of if you were looking at your backlog or you were looking at your homeowners, some of the things to think about in terms of where to make the best list view is what is the information that you are interested in about them. So are you looking to see when their projected close date is? Are you looking to see how much their totals are? Or what is it that you want to see in that list view about your backlog? Because obviously you can build it in both connections and quotes because everybody in your backlog is going to have a quote that's going to be in the status of approved. So you could look at your approved quotes, or if you're looking for information about the connections, then that status of the connection is going to be in the stage of sale slash backlog. So you can pull the list in different ways depending on what information you're looking for. Um, One of the ones that I'll go into just to demonstrate kind of how you can use them for updates. First, I'll update some of the dates that I build in a quote list view. Then we'll go into a connections list view and we'll take a look at, some of maybe our prospects or our current backlog and see how we can update information about them or easily reach out to them based on, the priority. And then I don't know if this particular group uses the status of, yellow, red, and green. I think that's more of a mortgage type thing. They'll use it to determine how they're doing and whether we need to worry about them or not. But you can pull lists in that method as well. So in any of these list views, I'm just going to start with my list of approved quotes. But I'm going to say that this isn't exactly the way that I want it to look. I have different information that I want to pull into this. Maybe I want the home buyers, I want the co-buyers. I want to know if they have an agent. I want different information. So I'll go ahead and clone this list view. And I will just name it for purposes of this. I'm just going to call it test delete so I don't mess anybody up. Down here, most of you will only have the ability to only I can see this list view. What I was mentioning that some of the individuals in your team can do is share this list view with a group, and they can mark it to share with SHALC, which will give it your entire division. Now, once you clone the list view, you'll now have the ability to edit any of the filters, change any of the items that are listed right here. So one of the things to start with is thinking about what it is you're looking for. So in your filters over here, this is where a lot of times you'll narrow it down by division, by community. You might be looking for only closings that occurred in a certain month. So for this particular list, right now I just have it set to show all of my approved quotes, and this is set for Northern California. As I've mentioned before, I always recommend using contains, especially for the names of your communities, because otherwise you have to type exactly, trilogy at something something, or get the naming perfect. Whereas if you use contains, it's very forgiving, and you can say community contains Ocala, and you don't have to type the whole trilogy at Ocala Preserve or anything like that. When you're working on your filters, you can add any new ones. And this list right here is going to be every single field that you have available on the quote. One of the things you'll notice down at the bottom, just as a rule of thumb, if we've noticed that there are certain fields that are specific to Salesforce, in other words, they give them to you by default, but we don't use them the same way, I've started putting Z's in front of them for a couple reasons. One, it throws them to the bottom of the list, so I hope that people won't see them as much. And two, if you are using these, they are not what we think they are. So actual close for Salesforce is not a close of escrow date like we have at Shea. So I noticed that a lot of reports were being built with these because it happened to say parentheses reporting at the end. And that was just a standard Salesforce field. So I put Z's in front of it and tried to, take them down to the bottom of the list. We are not able to delete any of the standard Salesforce fields. So the best that I can do is put Z's in front of them to try to kind of let you know, don't use these in any of your reports because they will give you invalid information. If you did want to narrow this list down, and let's say I only want to look at things that are projected to close in the next month, I can go to my projected close date, and it does accept values of this, last, next. I think we've all kind of used a lot of those. I know that our week is a different week, and some people have tried to change their locale to be Ireland or another locale. I have had a conversation with the Salesforce engineers because they kept telling me all you need to do is change your locale, and that was their solution. Unfortunately, they were not realizing that that also messes with currency. So then if you're trying to do a currency, you will sometimes end up with your incentive addendums or other addendums where the dollar amounts don't look correct or don't appear, and that's the reason. The other issue that it causes if you use, I think it's Panama or one of the other ones we used to use, the date will be written in Spanish, which is fine for some people, but obviously doesn't work for everybody. So I have elevated it as high as I possibly can because I do know that I have no idea why in the world I found 9,000 other people in the Salesforce world that reported it as a problem. You can set your fiscal year, you can set your office hours, you can set everything you want by your Salesforce org, but you cannot set what your day of the week should be. In my opinion, that should be something you set at the beginning, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me, but apparently it is. So I do have the team working on some new formulas that they've offered up to see if we can create our own week in a different way for reporting. But unfortunately, as of right now, if you do use like this week or last week, it is the wrong week. It will give us Sunday to Saturday as opposed to Monday to Sunday. So for that reason, that's the only one that doesn't work real well for most of our teams. However, you can do projected close date, and I will say equal to this month. And when I hit done and save, it's going to update it so that everything showing on my report is now, or on my list view, is anything that has a projected close date this month. Now, I know that, for example, right now in the times we're in, that we have had a lot of projected closing dates that have been pushed out. So what I was mentioning before, one of the benefits of list views is the ability to mass edit. So rather than go in, if I know that every single one of these is being pushed out a week, I don't need to go into every single quote to update it. I can simply come in here and edit my dates. And as I start to do these, and I'm not going to actually do them or save them, but once I do, it will turn yellow. And as you continue, you can start updating anything you like in this list view and then hit save, and it will go out and update all of that information. If, for instance, I did something and I didn't mean to, I can always hit cancel. As long as it's yellow, I haven't actually saved it yet. Obviously, there's some fields that are going to be locked. We're not going to let you change certain fields. The owner's last name, you need to actually click the button on the quote to change the owner's name and let them know and update the right spots. Things like the pricing fields, these are formula fields. We're not going to let you type over a price. But any of the fields that you would normally have access to change, cutoff dates, projected closings, all of that information you'll be able to edit in these screens. One note on that is if you are in something like quotes or one of the common ones where if you're not seeing these pencils and you're wondering why am I not able to see that, a lot of times you'll come over here and if you hover over this, it'll say why. It wants you to pick a record type. So for quotes, we have spec quotes and we have regular quotes. It wants to define which one before it's going to let you mass update. So to demonstrate that, if I delete the record type and I save it, now suddenly I don't have my pencils anymore. And if I come over here to the pencil, it will say inline edit is disabled. To edit, filter by one record type. So if you ever are wondering why you're not able to edit certain fields that you know you can edit in a regular quote, that's when you can hover over and it'll usually tell you why. So if it wants you to do a record type, then you come in here, you add a filter, and you go to the record type, and it'll say, okay, you need to pick one of these. It will do it for mostly the quotes. You'll have to pick a regular or a spec quote, and if you're in products, it's going to ask you, are you looking at lots, plans, or options? And it'll make you select one of those, just so that the system knows which one it is we're talking about. As soon as I do that and hit save, I now have the ability to edit everything again. So this works again when you're doing anything with dates. You can edit basically any field that you could edit on the actual quote. Sync pricing with E1. I used this one a lot when we were first trying to better understand the sync pricing and everything. I would have people that handle the pricing. So a lot of you do that. You can create a list view that will tell you which ones are marked. So if you know that you have 5 of your lots that you want to make sure they don't update with the next price release, you can actually create a list view to pull up a certain set of lots, and you can check and uncheck the sync pricing in here as well so that you don't have to go into each and every one of them. So the list views do have a nice feature of allowing you to edit a lot of fields at once in line as opposed to going into the actual quote. And again, because these are not saved for the entire world to see, you can modify this in whatever way you want. And we're not adding to 15,000 reports in our library that get confused and that don't necessarily get updated. One of the things to keep in mind, these are real time. So as you're, come into each one of these, it's going to give you the latest and greatest information as of the moment you open it. And it does also allow you to kind of take a list that you've already created and say, if you're looking for just a specific group of individuals, I use these very regularly when I get questions from, your team or other divisions. It'll say, I'm trying to find, why are these particular buyers showing up differently or something like that. And I will come in and use the filters to try to narrow down to just those people that you're referring to and see what's different, what am I looking at. So these can come in very handy. It's also, if for some reason you're looking for, like I said, the projected closings for this month, so you know who is the backlog I need to focus on right now, because these are the ones that I need to pay attention to. You can also look at, okay, now who are the ones closing in the next, I could do next 60 days, and that also counts. Next 3 months, you can do anything like that. If you want to look at people that recently closed, then I can just keep my same list view and I say, oh, now I want to look at the people that have an actual close date that was last month. So you can actually create one list view and just reuse it multiple times and change your filters quickly to show you a different list. And they didn't have any closings last month, which is not good. But so that's basically um, kind of the updating and modifying of the list views. If I pick a different one and go into the connections, this is where you're going to find a lot of your prospects in terms of who is it that I should be reaching out to. I always start with the prospect connections list. I know that there's different information that everybody would like to know. We have recently updated the phone field. Hopefully that will make using some of these list views easier as well. I know there was about 6 phone fields that existed on the people's accounts, and we were only using about 2 or 3 of them. So I needed to make sure that, when they were coming in as leads, they were transferring through properly. So you should see a lot more phone numbers filled out. And again, if you did need to do something where you're calling a large group of people and wanting to update their information, you would have the ability to do some of it in these list views, but a lot of this information, for example, the email is stored on their account, so it's not going to let you update their email right here. You would need to go into the account list because that's where the email lives. Or if you notice that this is incorrect, you speak to him and he says, oh, I need to update my email. You can click on the account name right there, go straight into his account, update his email, and then go back to your list view and start continuing down the list of people you need to reach out to. So these can be very useful in terms of easy access, filtering it down. If you only wanted to see people that heard about us from shayhomes.com, you can add a filter in about that. If you wanted to see, as you mentioned, I believe the priority, and let me double check and what that is called exactly. I think it's the rating. So it is the prospect rating. And I believe, is this the field that your team is using, Steve, in terms of who you want to reach out to first, or is it the I plan to purchase, and what time frame?
We're using prospect rating as the primary means of categorizing and
Okay, and that's what you're
track.
supposed to use. That's a different division, so I just happened to click into a different one. But the prospect rating is the one that's designed for that purpose, so that you are able to not just look at when are they wanting to purchase, but how ready are they to purchase? Have they gone through the financial steps? Just because I say I want to purchase in the next 30 days, if I have no money, then I probably am not an A. And it also, after you talk to them, you can change that rating. So if I wanted to pull that in, I would come in here and select my fields to display and go to the prospect rating. And I can pull that into any one of these lists. And again, what's nice is now you have the ability, if you had a prospect list and this was the people you were reaching out to, if you speak to them, you can change their rating as you're talking to them. So instead of having to go into each and individual connection, if you start working down your list and you've got your phone number here and you've got your information and you speak to them, you can go ahead and update your prospect rating in here, hit save, and it will update that rating on the connection without you having to go into each and every one of them. And a lot of times, if you're using a report, that's what you're having to do. There's no editing on the report. So if you have a great report built and it tells you the information, but then you still have to click on the connection, you have to go into the connection, and then you have to start making your updates in there. So this, if it is a field that you update on the connection, it will give you the ability to update it quickly without having to go into the connection, update it, save, and then go back to your report and continue down the list. And then all of these lists as well, they do have a printable view. Some people like this if, for example, you have a list of home buyers and maybe you're somebody that prefers to have a paper list and go down the list. It's not recommended by Salesforce, so they make it very ugly. And they only allow you to have so many records that print on the list, and they don't make it exportable to Excel or anything like that, and they do that intentionally. I've asked, and they have no intention of ever making this something you can export to Excel because they want you to do everything you would do in Excel right here on your screen. So they don't want you to do that, and that's where they've made it clear that is not the intent to ever have it do that. So are there any questions in terms of, the list views and kind of what the function of them is, things you're wondering if they can do, any of them that you're stuck on that I can open up and I can log in as any of you. So if you do have one, you're probably not the only person that's stuck on the same list view. You guys are all experts.
It's interesting on this call, Amy, we don't have, apparently not many of our sales management team was able to participate, and they're the primary users, and that's probably a function of it being Thursday. So it's a good thing we're recording. I see Melba's on, and I know she's pretty well versed in this area, but others may not be, so it's good that we're recording.
Yeah, and again, if it turns out that, you're missing a lot of your key players, there's no reason we can't do this on Tuesday. And if Tuesdays are better, we can always just do Tuesdays. It's not a problem. Right now is the time that, everybody's kind of doing a lot more working from different locations, more Skype meetings, less people just randomly walking through the door. So now's the time. And if there's certain people that say, I struggle with list views and they want a half an hour just for themselves, as I mentioned, now is the time. So now's the time to get familiar with Salesforce, figure out how to make it work for you because it might be a little less busy with the day-to-day people walking in. So it's a good time to take advantage of it if you can. And I know different people are at different levels with different questions, so I don't mind, breaking it up into individuals if they need it.
I'm glad to hear that, Amy, because I actually I have a list view that's pulling in information that I am not understanding why it's there, and that's where I kind of struggle with. This is Melba, by the way.
Hi. Do you want me to open that up real quick, or do you want me to go to the reports and then we...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's under products.
It's just yours, though. Hang on one second. I have to be you. Because I don't see any of your information either. So whenever I...
Okay.
Melba, you could also share your screen if you have it open.
I do. But she can show everybody too, or she can fix it as she goes, though. Whichever way you want me to do, Amy.
I can pull it up, and that way everybody can see it, and I'll go ahead and basically what I do when I log in as you, I'm just looking at your screen. So it's very similar.
There it is right there. And it's the very first one. It's lot 162. And it did have a sale on it, but the sale canceled. So it's no longer a designer home. It's not a spec home. But for some reason, I can't get it out of this list view and into the to be built or the available lot list view. So when I have things like this happen, I don't know how to fix them.
So the reason that it's showing as an inventory spec, you said you did have a cancellation?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's actually, that is not anything wrong with your list view whatsoever. That is something that I actually just had the developers fix a couple days ago. And so because they only work in 2-week sprints, I have to wait until the following one to get it done. What's happening is when the lot is as soon as you have a buyer on it, it becomes an inventory spec and it locks the plan just because we don't want somebody else to go in and start changing the plan and elevation if you have a buyer on it. And then when you cancel, it should be coming back in here. And if you are not a division that has pre-plots and this plan locked is not checked, it should revert back to regular. So as long as you do not have a quote that is in the approved status, this should be regular. So that is not your list view at all. That is a fault of having the wrong type right here. So your list view is 100% correct. And what it should be doing is, because of the fact that I have, where did it go? Oh, there we go.
Do the pinned one. Yeah.
So right here, this is the issue. Your list view is 100% correct. And this should stay regular.
So when I see things like this, I should report it to you because it's a glitch in the system that needs to be fixed.
Correct. So that's why I said if you ever have a list view that doesn't look correct, let me know, because it's either one of two things. It could be one that there's, some type of bad data in the system, or it could just be that maybe you're pulling in a field that doesn't work, or maybe there is a filter that is pulling in things, or a missing filter. A lot of times it happens with, spec versus regular quotes. If you don't put the right filters on there, I think we had a few of those a few months ago, where we were going through an inventory report, and if you don't have the right filters on there, you'll end up with double quotes because it'll pull in a regular quote and it'll pull in the spec quote. So that's basically the other time that you'll have an issue. So this particular one is nothing to do with you, and I might be able to add some filters on this to fix it, but it will be corrected within whatever 2 weeks from yesterday is, or 2 weeks from this last Tuesday.
No worries. It's been there for a while. I just take it out. And then maybe you can help me with one under still products, TOC plan pricing confirmation. How do I filter that down just to have active plans? I'm not familiar with all of the different filters.
So over here, when you get into the filters, there is it is the plan status, I believe.
Status. Oh, I think I tried everything but.
Yes. So plan status, available, unavailable. So you would only want the available ones.
Yes.
And once you add that and hit save, now you will only have those that are marked as available. And the other way you can check too, if you're ever curious, if you're trying to find a filter and you know it's on the plan, but you don't know which one to use, you can also click on one of the plans. So for example, if I go into Excite, we typically will only put on this page layout things that are kind of important to Shay and things that might be what you're looking for. So by coming to this, I now see, I only want available, and that's called plan status. So now back on my list view, when I was looking at my filter, I want plan status. So sometimes I work backwards. If I don't know the name of a field, but I know that it's somewhere and I know that I want it, I will actually go to either the product, or I'll go to the quote, or I'll go to the connection, and I'll look and say, okay, for example, on this particular one, I want to filter by, what is it called? Is it cost center? Is it lot cost center? What am I looking for? And I'll find the name of the field is always right here. And then you can know what to filter by.
Got it. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so as you're navigating, I know there's a ton of fields, and it can get confusing which ones. And that's the same thing that goes on the quote. As I mentioned before, they have an actual close date in Salesforce. Well, we don't actually use that one. We use the actual sale date, and then we have a actual close date down here, whereas the one that was used before had parentheses reporting. We didn't use that one. So if you take the exact name of this field and this is what you're looking for, this would be your filter.
Okay, understood.
Any other questions before we'll jump over to reports. We may not make it all the way through, but we can at least get started on them and kind of continue and maybe then get some samples from other people that aren't on the call and we can review those together as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and log out as you so I don't mess up your stuff. That's how I cheat whenever I want to do something and I'm not sure if it's going to break anything. I just log in as Steve and then it ties his name to everything I do. Just kidding. Okay, so now let's go into the reports.
It doesn't look out of place amidst a graveyard of broken things.
See, I'm very good at breaking things, but fortunately I know how to fix most of the things I break. So that's where IT's a little forgiving on me because I will break things 90% of the time and then I will fix 99% of what I break. So it works both ways. As long as I fix it, they don't get too mad at me. All right, so we have obviously our Shea custom reports. There's nothing we can do in terms of editing, modifying, do anything with those. Those are ones where we have some of these where we've decided we need to look across like 7 different objects to pull in the information. Salesforce standard reporting only allows us a maximum of 3. And if we need more than that, we have to have a custom report created. One of the things I wanted to mention is this traffic history report. I know there's a lot of traffic reports out there that, might have some issues with counts. And I want to mention this only because it's probably more of the TCAs that will come to me with these, but it's a very typical issue where they will think that they need to enter unregistered traffic only 1 unit per day. Or 1 unit each time. So if they have 3 unregistered pieces of traffic on the 5th, they will come up here and enter unregistered traffic. And I don't have the new button, I apologize, because I'm not allowed to enter traffic. They'll enter it, but each one of these with 1 for every single day. When you're doing unregistered traffic, you should be able to enter a count for the entire day of like 4, 5, 6, however it might be. And when you come into these reports, I see a lot of them that look like this. And saying that I need to enter a different traffic record for each unregistered person. Really, this should have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Entered on March 21st. Instead, it's 5 entries of unregistered traffic with the same date. And I know that this is done because there is confusion of, well, if I don't do that, then it only looks like 1 unregistered person on March 21st. And that's because this particular report is using the date as opposed to the count of how many people actually came in. So this report right here is actually using the count, and it will tell you how many unregistered, registered, and BBACs you had for the given week. And you can run it by division, community, and you can pick your week ending date. So this one is very useful in terms of if you're just looking for a count. I know a lot of times people are looking for more information than that, but this is a really good starting point as a validation for your reports. So if I ever create a traffic report myself, I'll come here first and I'll say, okay, I should be seeing these particular numbers on my report. If I'm not, then I missed something. Or I have some kind of a filter on there that I probably messed up. So when it comes to these types of reports, traffic is just the one I see most frequently where they'll just be using the date as opposed to the count. So when I come in here and edit this particular report, I'm not going to permanently do it because I don't want to mess with her report. But you will see that there is a field for count. And that is the one that's going to tell you how many individuals actually came in on that day. So when I add in the count field, and I'm not saving it, I'm just running it. So don't worry if this is one of your division's reports. I promise I'm not messing with it. But by adding the count over here, now you can see that there's more than one on a day. And this will give you different numbers. So when I actually ran it this way, this particular individual told me this number is way too high, that this should only be, I believe, 15 total. And instead, we now have about, I think, 30 something. So I'm working on adjusting that, but I just wanted to mention that if you're looking at traffic reports, that's a very key thing to keep in mind. The count is very different than the date, and it will also save your TCAs or whoever it is entering your traffic a lot of frustration, because they should not have to enter one every single time they're doing it. They should be able to enter the date and how many people came in that were unregistered. So I just wanted to mention that one first, because it's probably one of the most common ones that, I'm sure frustrates the TCAs to no end that they have to do that. Some of them may have figured it out, some of them may have not, but just wanted to mention it. And again, sometimes using these custom reports is a great way to validate your information, and make sure that you're seeing what you want to see. That being said, another thing that I highly recommend whenever I'm doing a report, if I am building a report for the entire company, I will never build it for the entire company first. I will typically start with one community, and depending on what the report is, maybe even less than one community, and just look at, an even smaller subset, because then when I want to know if my information is correct, it's a lot less research that I have to do. So if I'm building, for example, a projected closing detail report, I will start by saying, only show me the projected closings for 1 week at one community. And then that gives me the ability to only have to check maybe 3 or 4 records to make sure I'm getting the information I want, as opposed to starting from, oh, well, this is what I want at the end of the day. I'm going to build this really massive report for all the divisions, and I'm going to put the communities, and then I'm going to put the phase, and then all of a sudden I don't get the results I want. But it turns out that it takes me 7 hours to go back and figure out what I did wrong. So that's something to keep in mind when you are starting to create these reports. First thing to do is know what it is you're looking for. So when I come in and create a new report, there's going to give you like types of reports. There will be a million different types. A lot of these, probably 90% of them, are defaults given to us by Salesforce, and then maybe 10%, if not less, are ones that we have actually added because people will commonly do reports. For example, if I come down here and look at the other, those are ones that I've asked for. So quotes with contingencies, for example, is one that did not exist because contingencies are something just for Shay. So we had to create our own form of reports in there. You can start with all and just start searching and say, I need to do a report that is looking at connections, and narrow it down to those. Or you can come over here and select connections and look at different ones. So if I'm trying to look at a report that shows me information on 2 different objects, I need to know what those objects are to start with the right type. The reason the type is important is it tells you what fields you're going to have access to. So if I pick connections with products, it's going to give me the option to use all the fields from connections and all the fields from products. And I can merge those into my report. But if I need something from quotes, that's not going to be in here. So I need to make sure that I get the proper type of report once I start. A lot of times I'll select one and then I'll double check that it has most of the fields that I'm looking for before I actually start building the report. Another option that you have is to actually copy an existing report and create your own version of it. I do want to mention that we actually currently have 1,593 reports already. Some of the things to keep in mind, and I think in the interest of time, I probably won't dive into too much of how to build a report until the next call, or I will end up rushing through it and confusing everybody. So some of the high-level points on reports, one thing for everybody's sake to keep it clean. If you create a report and you're never going to use it again because you realize that it did not give you anything that you wanted, please do everybody a favor. and delete your report. So I can delete anybody's, but for the most part, you are the only one that can delete the reports you create. So it does help quite a bit to keep things clean, because as we're going through a lot of this, we're finding that in the beginning, we didn't provide you enough, and we're aware of that, but a lot of items were created that have never been used again. And it does help to clean them up. When you are in a lot of these folders, if I go into the active lifestyles folder, these corporate reports are the ones that I will vouch for. Other than if you see, for example, this folder created, I didn't do that one. But if you see any of these, for example, if we had an appraisal report that was created and it was a mess, it was very incorrect. I came in and updated the version under the corporate folders, but a lot of individuals had copied that report and created their own version just for their community. And I will not ever find that report, and I will never know to go and update it. But what you need to be aware of, if you go into any of these corporate reports, they will all start with the community right here. You can find your community. So if I am at, where am I going to be at? I'm going to be at Trilogy Lake Frederick. I can click this box right here, select drill down, apply, and now this report is just for my community. If I need to export the report, it will only show my community. So it's very important, if at all possible, do not copy this report, save it into your own folder, and just add a filter for Trilogy Lake Frederick, because anytime we make a change to this particular report, yours will not get updated. Every single one of the reports that lives in the corporate reports folder for active lifestyles is just for your division. So if for some reason you look at this report and you say, you know what, as active lifestyles, we never use the elevation number. We do not care about that. I can remove that field so that this report is more useful for your division. So that's where you can reach out to, either Melissa, Carrie, Steve, as long as they tell me that the division agrees that they want this report changed, they want something added, removed, anything, it is entirely Active Lifestyles report. But by saving and not copying it a bunch of different times, you're more likely to get an accurate report most of the time. So I highly recommend doing that where you can, even if it's something where Steve creates a report and he says, this is a great report. Anybody that's building a report can group by something, and it will allow that report to be used across the board by simply checking the community and updating it. So when I'm saying that you can group, and again, I'll go over this again when we actually build a report, but right here when it says group rows, anything you put in here is basically allowing you to filter by that. So if I create a report and I want, maybe it's something where it's by person at your community, so it's your CRs, and it's a report that shows, their current backlog by CR. And it's a report you want them to pay attention to every single day. You can build one report and make sure that what you're grouping by is the CR or sales rep, and it will do the same exact thing that I just did with this one, where it will actually group it, and they could select their name right here and do the drill down, and then the report is for them, instead of having to do a save as and create one report for Susie, one report for John, one report for Bob, and it's the same report, and they've just saved it 3 times for their own name. But you could just have one version, and all they have to do is come in here and check the box and change their name. And all it's really doing is adding a filter down here that I can remove. And now it has everybody again. So that's a way to prevent having to create so many versions, because what will also happen is now, let's say we redo the way that our activities are going to go. We've come up with a much better way of doing it. Now, whoever created those reports has to go into 7 different versions of the same report and add a column instead of just adding a column to one report, and then everybody is using the same report but checking off their name when they need to look at their information. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're building the reports, trying to keep the count down, as well as it helps when you need to make changes and you want to only do it one time instead of 100 different times on different reports. We only have 5 minutes left, and I know that there's other meetings right after this one as well as for myself. So I don't want to just start talking about how to build a report and get into 3 minutes of it and then throw it out the window. So I'm going to just open it up for if you have any general questions on the reports. And also, if you have any reports that you've been dying to get fixed or that you've started and you just can't seem to get the information you want, please send those to me after this call. And that way, when we have the call to review it, it's much more useful if either, like today, if Melba opens up her report and I walk her through how to fix it, or I can open it up as her and we walk through it. I think that's more useful than me just generally talking about a report and how to create it, because there's so many different variables and some of them you're going to know and some of them you're not. And I don't want to waste time on the things that you guys clearly understand and miss over key things that you're struggling with. So samples sometimes will be helpful. And that way, we can walk out of there, 1, with your report fixed so you can use it, and 2, a better knowledge of how to fix those issues that other people are probably having the same ones. So that being said, anybody have anything they want me to review in just the last 5 minutes? Any questions on what I went over so far? Anything?
Hey, Amy, thank you so much for taking all the time with us. It's really helpful, and I appreciate kind of working through like a more interactive approach there with like Melba and taking some questions as we go. I think it's really helpful. And then one thing Melissa Tolson had just shared with me, I'm not sure if all of the sales managers received the meeting request for Thursday. It sounded like she just got Tuesday. That may be limited because I see Melba on here, but.
Huh. Okay. I apologize. I'll have to, because I did it as a reoccurring meeting, so it should have been one meeting request.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just the piece of feedback that she shared, so something to double check.
All right, I will do that. I will double check, and then I'll work with you to find out when to do the next one, because I only put on 2, and I know next week is the stepping stones.
Just supplant that. Yeah, just supplant those. Just schedule them right over the top, okay. And then I'll delete those.
Yeah, Amy, I will share with you that when I got the meeting notice, I saw in the body of it where it had Tuesday, Thursday, and when it went to my calendar, Thursday did not show up, so I just updated my version of it and made it for Thursday. So is it only just this week, or is it reoccurring every week?
Well, I'll put them on for next Tuesday and Thursday, and then basically we'll just do them until we get through enough of the information. So I didn't get through everything on the list yet, so we definitely need to cover the reports. And then if there's other topics that need to get discussed, there's really no limit, no start and end. Just kind of making sure we take advantage of this time to get you guys, as much information as we can for you to share with your teams and just for you to know as well. So it sounds like I need to sign up for Outlook training. So if anybody knows when that is, I need to get on that apparently, because reoccurring meetings are not my specialty. So I apologize.
Sometimes those are anomalies inside Outlook that are not solvable. I've seen that happen before.
Well, I'll go ahead and blame that because it sounds a lot better than Amy just messed up. But if I did, I apologize, and I will make sure that the next one I'm probably not going to do reoccurring. I will just do 2 meetings because it seems to work better that way. I will set those up, and I will also, I'll send out these recordings. Right now, I'm just putting them on a YouTube link to keep it easy, but it is only shared with people that I send the link to, so it's not a public, out there. But I don't think anybody really wants to go watch my YouTube trainings for fun, and if they do, they're welcome to. So I'm just putting them out there for now. If we want to move them later on, we can, but I will send out both the one from Tuesday and Thursday as soon as it downloads after this call.
Thanks a bunch.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you bearing with me as I'm kind of getting better at Skype training and how to make it better for you. So Steve gave me some great feedback. Anybody that has feedback, I welcome it. I want these to help you guys out so that you're more comfortable. So anything I can do, let me know. And have a great weekend, and I will talk to you all again on Tuesday.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.